Hey, Paul. How are you?
Good. How are you, Paulina?
Hey, thanks so much for taking my call. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Southern Maine in the United States.
Cool. I see some flag on your wall. What's that flag about? The red and blue?
So that's a burgee. Yeah, that's a burgee that is a flag that goes on a sailboat
Ooh.
that we were members of a sailing club before we moved to Maine, and that's the
Oh,
Brookville Lake Sailing Association in
very
Burgee.
nice. So, do you still own a boat or you've sold it?
We do.
You
We
do?
have a sailboat here on Casco Bay, which is a beautiful um, inland lake almost, but it's connected to the Atlantic Ocean in southern Maine.
Wow,
And
it's
so it's
beautiful.
kind of the yeah, it's a great area for sailing if you like that kind of thing.
Great. I love it. I live in Turkey. I have a tiny little sea view from my office window, and I often see those sailboats passing by. And there was like once or twice in my life that I did try that. I feel like maybe it's a lot
I
of
hear
work.
that's a beautiful place to sail.
Yeah, it definitely is. So do you,
It's kind of like running a small business. You're constantly tweaking this and adjusting that and making sure there's no big storm on the horizon. But then a lot of unknown things happen. So it's very similar. But you got to like being active and managing, tweaking the boat.
so do you get a lot of private label ideas then? Because I'm not normally someone who knows how to sail, so I wouldn't even come up with the ideas that you may have, having hands-on experience. Do you have any ideas or even do some products related to this?
I've had some ideas, and I have to admit I've not executed any of them because I tend to spend all of my most of my time kind of managing scan power and growing the company. And I find that, and I'm interested to hear, your take on it, but I find that balancing being a seller, whether it's private label or whatever on the Amazon platform and running a third party tools software business, they're very different in terms of capital needs and in terms of where you focus. And so I find it easier for me to try to maintain connections with our sellers and understand the business at the same time that I'm really focused on putting out the best software that we can. Um, but that just may be my skill set. So I'm actually interested to hear your take on running a private label business at the same time that you're managing a software service.
Actually, I'm very, very similar in the way that I started as an Amazon seller. So that was in 2014 with the gold rush. But after that, I felt like it was too cash flow intensive, right? And then when my software started growing little by little by little, I found myself leaving the Amazon business to plateau and not reinvesting because, the only way to grow the Amazon business is to keep adding new products or do
Right.
some marketing, put the money in the marketing, right? And I stopped adding more money. Rather, I'd discontinue some products and add new products just so I still have the creative power in it, right? So that's the part that I enjoy the most, something creative, to create the new product, to invent the marketing ways about it, test the prices and all kinds of things. So I keep re-adding, but I found the cash flow intensity is just so difficult. And these days I consult some big sellers that use my app, and even they borrow from friends and they like take Amazon loans. 8-figure sellers are still borrowing and still adding, and it seems to me like this is a little bit never ending story. It's just cash flow so intensive, while software is not like that at all. Of course it has expenses and things like that. You need upfront investment while it becomes profitable, but I find it much more manageable than the Amazon business in terms of cash flows for private label. So scam power is related to arbitrage, right? So what about arbitragers? Don't you guys need a lot of upfront investment as well, especially for wholesale? You buy the whole lot and then it's sort of similar in terms of investment, isn't it?
It is. And I think the lead times are different. So let's say you're creating a private label product, you're going to need to set aside a certain amount of capital and then invest that capital, over a longer period of time before the product actually arrives. And I've watched one of your videos where you go through all the different shipping options for getting products from overseas, and that was very good, by the way. But for a retail or an arbitrager in general, you're putting your cash to work, sometimes almost immediately, and then the limiting factor becomes how quickly can you prep the product and get it to Amazon's warehouse. Now, I will say up front that 98% of our sellers are primarily FBA sellers, so they're using Amazon's fulfillment network. So when you look at the lead time to get a product into Amazon's fulfillment network, that's often the limiting factor. And that's how, if you're sourcing profitable items, you're expecting them to sell 30, 60, 90 days at most. So you're not tying your cash up for as long, but to your point, there is a significant investment. So people are spending $2,000-3,000 a day to build inventory and to continue to build their sales.
Okay, so would you say wholesale is more of I guess wholesale is bigger amounts of items at the same time, right? Retail arbitrage is more like what you find on sale, little bits of 5 units there and 5 units here, and then wholesale is just like you buy a lot from some lot reseller. Is that how it works?
Yes. So the interesting thing about retail versus wholesale is, while the quantities that you can obtain are fairly low sometimes with retail, we've spent a lot of time trying to help sellers scale up that type of operation. So you can imagine the big challenge is, can you find, more than 5 of an item? Can you find, a style that's profitable and get all the colors and sizes that are going to sell? And so the way our sellers have approached that is by creating, we have team features and reports and functionality that helps people easily add new shoppers. Let's say they're going to go out and source items for them, and then the collection of shoppers are feeding inventory into a warehouse for prep. And so they end up being able to increase the quantities they can get. But your take on it is exactly right. Quantities are lower on the retail side, quantities are higher on the wholesale side, but profit margins are also much higher on the retail side. People are looking at ROIs almost always over 50% and often in the 100% range, whereas in the wholesale, people are accepting lower margins because they can sell at higher quantities. So it's an interesting calculus.
Okay, so you said scan power, right? I see on your t-shirt. Let me just share my screen, and I'd like to take a look. See, I was looking you up on LinkedIn, and let me connect. I'll send you the invitation to join. All right, so let's
great.
Scan power. So scan power, just like that.
Yes.
Right. There's a bit of delay.
Yeah, a little delay on my side too.
Okay. All right, so there it is. Scan power. Oh, very nice landing page. I like that. Cool. Somebody's opening a box. Yeah. So the Scan Power is an app, right, for mobile phone. Yeah. It's not a web app, right?
It's actually both.
Okay.
So we were the first company to create a live app, a live scanning app that could show you kind of a complete picture of the potential for a product on Amazon's marketplace. So back in 2009, Chris Green and I got together and created the first version of ScanPower, which was initially a web app for listing items to FBA. But pretty quickly, within the first 4 or 5 months, we added this mobile scanning feature. So we've always had kind of a combination of web and mobile, with pretty tight integration between the two.
Okay, so this is what I'm looking at is the mobile version. Is that your app? No, that's not.
Yeah, that's an older version of it, but
okay. Yeah, I opened this. I couldn't quickly find any screenshots of your app. Just wanted to see what it looks like. That's why I opened it up. Go and check it out, what it looks like first, to get a feel for it. Yeah, that's why I opened it up. All right. So the idea is you scan the item. What about if I'm a wholesaler and I get the list from my distributor, or supplier of some catalog items? So what would I do then? Can I manually enter one by one, or like how will you help wholesaler?
Right. So the mobile app is generally, you're in the field, you're scanning barcodes. You can do title searches and things like that. But we have a web app called Evaluate that I think there's a fair number of tools now that have the same capability, but you upload a spreadsheet. So let's say the supplier provides you with their price list that may or may not include an ASIN, but it has a UPC. So you upload your spreadsheet that includes your cost and any additional information that you might want to include. For example, condition, we default to new, but so we'll run that through the same kind of criteria. It's a rules-based evaluate. So you can run a set of spreadsheet items and see profitability. You can see competition. You can see rank, obviously. So this video that you're looking at is just an example of how to set up your rules.
All right. Yeah, this is very nice because it gives me a lot of flexibility then. Instead of giving me the whole bunch of data that I have to sift through myself, you will just give me the results that I want, right? The filtered ones. What are the most common filters that people use, like those rules? What are those rules most commonly? Is like, how do they choose what is going to be good? Do you calculate the approximate profitability of each item? Like what else would I be looking at?
Yeah, the 4 or 5 common criteria is sales rank, number of FBA offers. If there's more than a handful of FBA offers, you may not want to compete with those sellers, especially if it's not a fast-moving item. So sales rank drives a lot of it. Number of reviews. So if the product has been reviewed, you generally know that people are buying it and it's moving. I won't say most, but a lot of our sellers don't want to compete with Amazon. So, one of the rules is reject it if Amazon is on the listing.
Okay.
And then we have a lot of sellers that do clothing and shoes. So
I sell clothing as well. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So that when you look at the sales rank for one of your items, that's across all the variations.
Yes.
So in our mobile and web apps, we provide, I don't think any other company does this, but we will tell you the number of in-stock variations over the total variations. And so you can actually do some math in your head to take the sales rank and the number of in-stock variations and make the decision about whether it's an item that you want to purchase to resales. And then, you can kind of dive deeper on the variations theme by looking at which variations are more popular, which ones have reviews. We're actually getting ready to release a new feature for our mobile app that includes a variation viewer. It's not exactly the same as RevSeller, but it's along the same lines where you can more easily kind of dig down and see, okay, these pair of black shorts in size medium has 2 reviews. This, marmalade colored shorts that are size XXXL has no reviews and no ratings. So yeah, that's probably more specific than you wanted, but just the criteria that sellers use that Amazon doesn't provide that information, and often in their APIs, they definitely don't provide it in a way that is digestible for your typical seller. So that's what we try to do.
Cool. So ScanPower is both mobile and web app. So if I sign up on one, I will basically have access to both right away, right?
That's correct.
I see all these marketplaces that you support. So Canada, UK, even Australia. Cool. Where are most of your customers from? Which country?
It's in the order there of those marketplaces in terms of popularity. I'd say 80 to 90% in the US, 15% in Canada. The UK is another, less than 5%, and then it drops off from there. So we have all of our apps are localized in terms of currency and marketplaces. Not so much in terms of language. They're all the interfaces are in English, but everything else is localized for all the marketplaces you see there, as well as Japan, although that's not part of our regular sign-up flow, but we do have a couple of customers in Japan.
Interesting. So you are the founder. Are you the one who designs the app and decides what features to put in, like based on your own experience? Like I'm imagining you were the original person who came up with everything about the software. Is that right?
Yeah, in addition with my partner. So when we founded it, Chris and I was more of the technical lead and he was more of the sales and marketing, and certainly came up with a lot of the ideas for helping sellers take advantage of FBA. Right now, I would say I'm more like a program manager in terms of I spend a lot of time getting product feature ideas and requirements from sellers, and less time coming up with every single feature, because a decision that we made a long time ago was to try to be as responsive to sellers as possible, so that influenced what kind of development methodologies we used and what we optimized for in creating the products. And so we try really hard to be responsive to customers such that they can request a feature and we can deliver it within a month or two. And sometimes we can deliver it in 2 weeks. So I really, I have a role that is kind of channeling their ideas and adding my own kind of technical expertise to that, and driving some of the UI or user experience, but not all of it. I have developers, Zach and Phil, who work out of our Indiana office, and they have a lot of input into both the look and feel of the products as well as the technology we use.
Okay. So how long it's been since you launched? How long ago did you launch?
We launched in 2010, so we're getting ready to celebrate our 10-year anniversary.
Wow, that's a long time for a software. So, yeah, we've been, about the features that you said that you rely on customer requests mostly. In my software, we are only 2.5 years old, and I find it very hard to, how to say, to control the flow of features into the software, because there are so many different types of sellers that use our app, both arbitrageurs and MFN sellers and FBA sellers, and there is a lot of types and cases and all kinds of use cases that, different features for each. And the whole concept of shopkeeper is basic and simple and just the most needed features, so when the feature requests come in, I find it really hard to navigate like which one is really needed. It's not always the one that is most voted. Most voted one just could be a lucky chance that I've got. I promoted into arbitrage Facebook group, and there's more arbitrageurs now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very hard to define that and take that lead, as a developer and a founder to decide what goes in and what doesn't make it. So how do you do that process? How do you control that flow, not to have too many features? And
I won't claim that I do a very good job of it, but I know, I feel your pain. It's a very challenging thing to balance, because your largest customers are very important and you want to keep them happy, and sometimes their requests don't apply to 50% of your users, but it's important for that person to continue to scale their business. But I would say it's probably in the top 5 challenges that I've had trying to manage the company and not lose cohesiveness to the products. And I know that no two sellers are alike in terms of how they run their business, and so it gets challenging when they ask for a feature that a handful of people are going to make use of, but not all of your customers. And so rather than try to manage that and rather than trying to keep the products completely cohesive, I think we've let the development of features and the request kind of actually shift the products into different lanes, if that makes sense. So early on in ScanPower, I was spending a lot of energy trying to balance the feature request and create some kind of cohesive vision around those, and only allow the ones that were going to be used by a majority of the users. And I found that frustrated a lot of our sellers because they weren't getting what they wanted, and the Amazon kind of target was moving so quickly that I was never hitting it. And so I kind of gave up on that and just decided that you can think of it almost like an Amazon style experimentation. We didn't launch new products as frequently as it wasn't like we were experimenting like AWS and launching new products and throwing tons of resources into new products, but we were launching new features and new types of uses and workflows for our products. And then the ones that are most popular would then drive further development. And now, we have 5 products, but I don't really talk about 3 of them very much because we're spending a lot of our time, continuing to innovate in the mobile space. We're spending a lot of time. Our original product, like I said, was listing, to be able to quickly list products and get them into FBA. So we have a lot of calls through the inbound shipping API, and that didn't even exist when we started. So there they had just created an FBA API, but it wasn't part of Marketplace Web Services. Marketplace Web Services didn't even exist. And so I'm curious how you find the Amazon, just the technical landscape, but also the rules that Amazon changes daily. How much of your time you spend balancing keeping up with changes in Amazon versus just trying to move your product forward?
Ooh, it's a very painful question indeed. In reality, it works like this. We are working on one big feature and we are only able to publish one big feature a month. The rest goes to either bug fixes, special new use cases that we've discovered, or changes from Amazon. We pull all kinds of fees and all kinds of reports. So now Amazon switched from every 6 months long-term storage fee to be monthly charged. Now suddenly we have to just keep that in mind. And when new seller joins, up to that date, we have to scan one way and up from that date another way and make sure the time zone difference doesn't make anything missed. And there is a lot of things involved. It's not just... to a sellers, sometimes they ask me, if there are new features and why you guys are so slow and why it's not coming out so soon. Well, because there is so much, iceberg under the water that they don't see. And really plus we are scaling faster. The database is becoming huge and slow, right? So for our biggest sellers, that little circle is just turning. If it's turning more than 8 seconds, we consider it too slow, and then we go and try to optimize. And crazy things we do, like instead of storing anything in float numbers, which are with decimals, instead of that we are storing everything with just integers. So like $26.57, we are storing 2657 as an integer, and we just know that is a float actually. So just to save on all this little bit of performance for the database, so much work goes into that. So I totally hear you when you say that you have to plan and think about it. It's interesting. So you being arbitrage expert, do you do still arbitrage yourself right now these days, or you have given that up and just focus on the software 100%?
I still do arbitrage on a small scale, so I will spend sometimes less, but usually 1 day per week I'll spend in the field scanning and purchasing product and using our tools to prep and pack and ship it into Amazon FBA. My wife had a fairly active selling account for about 3 years, and then she decided to stop doing Amazon because it was just a part-time thing as her job got more intense. Especially since we moved here. And so I still use her account and do small scale arbitrage, but it's really just to, kind of keep my head in the game and to make sure that I'm using our tools in real world scenarios. Cause that's so, I would love for my developers to, spend more time doing the same, but their expertise is in software. So you don't want to kind of try to put a square peg in a round hole. But it's so helpful to, I do ask our developers to spend quite a bit of time handling support tickets. And that gives them real insight into, either the pain points of the sellers or the pain points that they're creating when something isn't intuitive or isn't done right. So, even though I'd like to have them out in the field using the apps more, just by having daily constant interaction with sellers, they have pretty good insights into how the software is used and where the pain points are.
I was thinking it's interesting for those Amazon sellers that are in the game right now, maybe it's sort of like a next advancement, from that to some automation, something like either a software or a service. Some of them have shifted to provide courses, consulting. Like you start somewhere. So let's say you most often start with retail arbitrage, and then you move on to maybe wholesale, maybe not, maybe you jump right into private label, but private label the FBM fulfilled, so merchant fulfilled, and then you jump into the FBA. So there's like a progression that I see, and then from that, where do you go next? It's like we are all entrepreneurs and we all feel excited about it, and then the excitement goes away 4 or 5 months later, and then you feel like, okay, what's next on my plate? And you keep looking for that new thing. And so I guess maybe that's the next step of progression. Then you start, once you learn how to grow the company, control the team, and then your Amazon business is bigger, then you feel like you can now create another something more bigger and significant than that. So it's interesting. I guess most of my audience is Amazon sellers themselves, but maybe that's something that everyone who's watching could consider. What is your next step? Maybe Amazon is not here forever. I mean, it's here forever, but is it going to be easy forever? That's a big question, and it's a lot of cash flow management and all of these other things. You have to really be doing business. Like Paul said in our pre-interview, and I'll mention to everyone if you don't mind. You said that some sellers or some people are just, YouTube makers who want more followers. And some of them are the ones who are actually sitting down and doing serious business and trying to grow their companies. So could you elaborate on that point a little bit?
Oh, sure. And when you talk about the progression of sellers, people start on eBay and they love eBay, but they found Amazon to be, more profitable. And yet they may still sell not just returns and things that don't sell on Amazon, but they may still maintain their eBay store because that's what they love. There's something, and so we see a progression from different platforms, and Amazon clearly is the biggest. But you also see progressions from retail arbitrage to wholesale to private label, but sometimes back to retail. So I'm part of a Facebook group, or I spend a lot of time with a Facebook group called RA Sourcing Secrets, which is run by this great group of sellers who have managed to, scale their businesses beyond what anyone would think you could do with retail arbitrage. And I've noticed in the past 2 years as Amazon has kind of stopped shutting down sellers wholesale and, suspending accounts in unpredictable ways, I've noticed that, retail arbitrage isn't dead, and more and more people are adding it back to the mix of the products they sell. And so there's almost a circular thing at work as well. And then what you mentioned is such a good point that, people evolve as they're building their business, and they gain new interests. And like you are interested in that concept, that creating a new private label product or just creating a new product, and not just what does the product do and who is it useful for, but what are the nuts and bolts of getting that product to market, And I think there's a lot of crossover with software too, because, we all know that, you have to have a good product and you have to have a good user experience, but there's so much else that goes into running a software service. I'm like you, I spend, some nights I'm awake at night thinking about whether the database is going to scale to meet the next set of customers. But back to the kind of seller journey. I also see a ton of sellers who, just happen to be really good at teaching people. And so they scale their Amazon business, and then they teach other people how to scale their Amazon business, or they have an employee who's really good at taking stranded listings and getting them unstranded. And that person starts a service, and that service is then recommended to the group. And, so it's a really interesting ecosystem,
That's right. I find
kind
it
of a
fascinating.
cool space that has a lot of opportunities.
That's right. So there's many people who want to start, and would you say your app is very useful for beginners, or is that more for big scale people who already achieved something with retail arbitrage? Like, who is your app for?
I think our app works good for all sizes of sellers, but we've discontinued our free version mainly because I think it's really hard to serve those people well at the same time that you're serving professional sellers if you're a small company like we are. So it was just a kind of a resource constraint decision to stop offering our free version. But we used to have a free version of the app anyone could use. It didn't have all the advanced features. And we also had put together what we called Scan Power University, which was kind of a smaller version of Amazon Seller University before that existed. And so we've spent, probably half of our life as a company really encouraging new sellers to come onto the platform. But that's not really our focus right now. So if you're a new seller, I think, going through Amazon's university courses, obviously you got a pro seller account. You need a pro seller account in order to use any of the good software tools out there. So you're already spending $40 a month or, whatever. And, if you combine that with just some other free tools for basic research, Amazon seller app, there's really a lot that you can do without starting a subscription to a software service like ScanPower. That said, I do think we're a good option as soon as you're ready to scale the business.
Cool. All right, we'll have to check it out. So ScanPower has quite a few competitors, right? What is the key thing that makes you different? Or not maybe the key thing, but why some people prefer you over the other guys? Is there something that differs you?
I think two things. One, we're small enough that we can still be pretty hands-on. And so if someone has a question, I still get direct, messages from customers. I still, people who get stuck or have an error get almost an immediate response from our support team. So I think there's a responsiveness that they just don't get in other places. And then I think the fact that we're willing to even consider doing some of the smaller features sets us apart too. Because like I said, we've tried to optimize for a quick turnaround when something breaks, when someone needs a new feature, when some experience just isn't right. We're very quickly able to deploy a fix if we have one, or tweak a view so that it works better for sellers. So I think it's just that responsiveness that people gravitate towards.
Very nice. Nice approach you have to the business. I like it. So I will not spend more of your time. I'd like to thank you for coming and chatting with me. And the sailing flag, I've been watching it the whole time. And, I noticed something, that the ScanPower logo has kind of the colors of that flag. Is that intentional?
No, it's not, unfortunately. We actually worked with this great branding company out of Rhode Island, and at one point we were called FBA Power. So our first name kind of leveraged Amazon's new service, and we got confused with Amazon some, and their legal team didn't like that. So we had to change our name from FBA Power to something else. So we worked with this branding company out of Rhode Island, and they came up with the colors, which were kind of unique at the time. But
Very nice.
We kept them.
You know, because shopkeeper used to be AMZ Ping, we also were not liked very much by the legal department of Amazon. And we were declined the acceptance to the Amazon app marketplace because they said just remove the AMZ part, even though the business was already 1.5 years old and we had paying customers and domain and the app and the server, everything on that, you know, and so yeah.
That is a painful process, but congratulations. Shopkeeper is just a great name.
Yeah, we all love it very much. It's been lucky for us that we have it. Yeah. Shopkeeper. Yeah. So are you gonna sail to Turkey sometime? Do you sail internationally at all?
Not yet. I hope to. We've sailed a couple 100 miles this summer. We spent some time cruising in Maine. They call it down east, but basically the southeast part of the state. And there's a couple of bays, Presumpscot Bay and Penobscot Bay, and it's just thousands and thousands of islands to explore. But eventually, I'd like to come to Turkey. I need to improve as a sailor first, but
yeah, I guess that's a big water puddle to sail over. Yeah, that's quite a lot of water.
Maybe I'll go to Canada first.
Yeah, and then Alaska maybe. Only it's a little bit cold. All right, then. It's been a real pleasure to chat with you today, Paul. Thank you very much for taking my call. And I will remember you as a sailor with the sailor flag, scan power. I will send you any arbitrager friends towards your way from now on. All right?
Oh, thank you, Paulina. This has been fun. And likewise, I'll be interested in learning more about Shopkeeper, and hopefully we can have you on to tell us more about it.
Great. Thank you so much.